I think, the interesting piece of being an information provider, I come at it from a little bit different perspective than the rest of my panelists. When I look at the impediments of investing in Africa and investing anywhere for that matter, I look specifically at the two major obstacles I see, which is really the access to information, that translates into transparency, and then really just the improving the actual investment climate or the business environment itself. And Thomson Reuters is in a very unique position to improve both transparency and improve the investment climate. And what I like to say, I've been with Thomson Reuters for well over 10 years now, but I've been in Africa for the last 18 months or so. And my mantra there is that Thomson Reuters really needs to help enable the African growth story and not merely just take advantage of it. We're in a unique position because of our products and services to do just that. I think most people are familiar with our financial information products, and I'll talk a little bit about that and what we do with some of the exchanges and what we do with some of the central banks as well, because that's clearly our core business in Africa, which is the information piece, which is clearly unlocking that and providing my panelists with that information to make their investment decisions. But then I also want to talk a little bit about what we do with some of our other pieces of our business in terms of actually improving the investment climate and the business operations. So, for example, in our legal information business and legal software business, we specifically are working with governments and in discussions with African governments and the judiciary there to improve transparency, to improve access to the rule of law, and we do that mainly through helping governments publish laws. We're working right now with Lagos State, specifically on publishing the laws of Lagos State. And that's just merely making laws available to corporations, investment firms that they may not have had access to before because it was stuck in a closet somewhere or wasn't published publicly. And so we're working with projects like that, but then we're also working with judiciary in terms of increasing transparency and decreasing the corruption that many of my panelists have talked about. We look at projects to publish court decisions, make them public in terms of who the judge was that was sitting on the bench, who the lawyers were that were in the courtroom arguing against that, and then basically doing the trend analysis on their decisions, so there's no more hiding, there's no more corruption in terms of being able to not see who made a decision based on what criteria. And that's really important to what we do in our core ethos in terms of our ethics and our values at Thomson Reuters. One of the other areas that we look at with one of our other businesses in our tax and accounting business specifically, and we're doing a lot of work on the continent, is with land registry and transparency around land ownership. Specifically, we have projects going on in several states in Nigeria. We have projects going on with several counties in Uganda right now, working with several other West African countries right now. But that's core and fundamental to improving investment climate in terms of just in terms of infrastructure projects. If who owns the land? How if I have this piece of land, can I sell it? Can I put that road on it? Can I put that hospital on it, and not be worried that it's going to be taken away later? And that's core and fundamental, and we're helping digitize that, make it publicly available, make websites that show clearly who owns the land, and that there's not 6 land registries in the back room, and depending on when you walk in the middle of the day, figure out who owns the land. So that's core and fundamental to some of the things we're doing. And then, as Ed mentioned, one of the major impediments of doing business on the continent is tax and understanding your certainty of your tax position. When you make a $50 million investment, you want to make sure that you're getting a return and you're not paying. You have no certainty whatsoever about what your tax position is. And regulations and laws around tax are changing every day, and Thomson Reuters is definitely in the business of working with governments and corporations to make those legislations understandable and make them transparent in terms of when they're enacted, and make sure there's consistency around the enactment. We're specifically doing things around transfer pricing, working with governments all across East Africa at the moment in terms of helping them set up transfer pricing legislation and then giving them the comparables to ensure that it's transparent and corporations can understand their tax position as it relates to that. So as investment firms and as companies do business, they'll understand their tax position. And then, like I said, I mean, as I said before, the obvious impediment to investing in Africa is just simply access to trusted and reliable information and analysis tools to make those decisions. And I guess I hope it's obvious, but we have very powerful tools and global platforms that we bring to bear, and many of my panelists use our platforms every day in terms of doing that. But what we're doing specifically in Africa, I mean, Thomson Reuters reorganized about 18 months ago to focus specifically on growth geographies, and that's part of the reason my position even exists, to manage Africa from Africa as opposed to other places. And that's a key theme you hear throughout, is you need to be on the ground in Africa. So just simply increasing our depth and breadth in Africa, both in human capital and in technology. So when I look at not just bringing to bear our global technology and our global platforms and investing that into Africa, we're working with exchanges, we're working with central banks to create new products and services that are Africa specific and address Africa specific problems. And then we're also investing in communities. I think one of the other things is we're bringing investors together through online chat rooms, online platforms, and then having conferences around that with our Trading Africa program. So there's a lot that we're doing specifically to address a lot of the challenges that my fellow panelists have talked about. One of the things I picked up on as well in terms of what Ed said that I just kind of want to mention, I wasn't originally going to talk about it, but Ed mentioned due diligence, and I think Sarah mentioned just knowing who your customer is and looking them in the eye. There's absolutely no substitute for looking your investment in the eye and understanding their practices and if they're corrupt or not corrupt. But we also have many of you may be familiar with our World Check business. We have about 200 employees based in Cape Town that specifically do background checks for corporations and investment firms like this. And we have a unique capability to do the anti-terrorism, anti-money laundering checks, and just in general background checks around African companies and African investment opportunities. So there's a lot that we have going on, Sunil, and it's an exciting time to be part of Africa because the main piece is, I think Ed said it, when you're comfortable investing in Africa, you get it. Once you're there and you know it, you get it. And that's what we're trying to do, is helping people get comfortable with investing in Africa.
Doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.